Hello and welcome to Romans International. I'm Tom Giaconelli, the main buyer here at Romans, and today we're doing a video on one of our best-selling models. It's the Ferrari 812, both the GTS and the Superfast, and this is going to be a buyer's guide. So we're going to give you all the different questions you should be asking the dealer you're buying one from. What are the most important options to look out for? Why might you buy the Superfast over the GTS? And just all the other factors to consider when you're buying one of Ferrari's greatest modern supercars. Okay, so we're going to start off by giving you a little brief history on the car. This is basically going to help in terms of the context of the age of the car and the sort of ages that you might be looking at. So basically the first few cars, at least in the UK, were delivered in 2018. So those would be the earliest cars on the market. And basically the 2018 and the 2019 cars are pretty much exactly the same. But something quite important happened for the 2020 model year. Not only did Ferrari introduce the 812 GTS at that point, but also with EU emission regulations, which were becoming ever and ever tighter, Ferrari had to adapt and introduce something called a gas particulate filter, otherwise known as a GPF. So all the 812 GTSs were fitted with a GPF, and all the 812 Superfast from 2020 onwards were also fitted with this GPF. This was to improve emissions. The downside is you do lose a little bit of noise in the car. So quite a few 812 Superfast owners, when they got their GTS, they noticed it was a little bit quieter, and that is because of this GPF. Not only that, but the GPF also slightly restricts power. So Ferrari actually made up for this, so all the post-GPF cars have a little bit of power, extra power, to give the car the exact same power output, exact same performance. So there is no performance difference, but you'll just know that your GPF car has a little bit more engine power to make up for that little bit of restriction. So now for the important part. How do you tell if the 812 you're looking at has been fitted with a GPF? So the best way of telling is actually looking at the engine bay. So this is a 2019 812 Superfast, not fitted with a GPF. If you look closely at the engine bay, pay particular attention to this sort of area here. On both sides, you'll notice there's no sort of thick pipe. But when you come on to the 812 GTS, which is fitted with a GPF, you'll notice on both sides, you'll see this thick pipe running through, which goes down towards the exhaust on both sides, and that means your car is fitted with a GPF. So now let's actually compare the difference in sound. So I don't know quite how that came across on camera, but certainly from where I was sitting, firstly, both cars are incredibly loud, so don't be too worried about the quietness of the GTS, but you might have noticed a little bit of difference in the sort of pitch. I certainly noticed the Superfast just felt like it sort of had a higher pitch sound, a cleaner sound, whereas the GTS just had a slightly more muffled sound. Obviously, there is a way of getting around this. There is a company called Novitec where you can get a full race exhaust, which just makes the car even louder than the Superfast. Just bear in mind that can void the Ferrari warranties. It is also worth just clarifying on the model years. Even though they said 2020 model year, there are plenty of 2020 Superfasts that don't have a GPF. It is just something you're going to have to check when you're buying the car. Okay, so next up we are on to the wheel choices, and there are a few different options here. It is worth mentioning all of the cars have 20-inch wheels, no matter which alloy you go for. And there is, of course, the standard alloys, but none of these cars have got the standard alloys, and in general, they're not a very popular choice. They're a little bit basic, a little bit bland, so you're going to want to get one of the upgrade wheels. Okay, so we'll start off on the 812 Superfast, and these are the upgraded forged wheels for the Superfast. You'll notice they're quite a bit sort of sportier. They've got that sort of directional design going on, and there are obviously quite a few different finishes here. These are the diamond cut polish finish. Or some people prefer a painted finish like this car, which got that sort of matte grey finish. I think the diamond cut finish is a little bit more expensive. In general, they're between sort of £3,000 and £4,000 when ordered new, but these wheels are a really popular choice. And you'll notice on this car, it's also got the titanium wheel bolts. But on the GTS, Ferrari actually did away with the design of those Superfast wheels, and for the forged wheel upgrade on the GTS, they've come up with this new design, slightly plainer, slightly simpler perhaps than the Superfast ones, but nonetheless really classy and clean looking. And again, these are the diamond cut polished finish. But for me, the best alloy of all are these. These are the racing alloys derived from use on the track. They're lighter, they're stronger. I think they're about £5,000 to £6,000 from new. And again, they come in a variety of finishes, these being, again, the diamond polished finish. One more thing is you do actually have to select the titanium wheel bolts. If you go for these alloys, they're another £1,000. So for me as a buyer, I will always look favorably upon the racing alloys in terms of its value, but I'll always consider a car with the forged alloys. That wouldn't put me off at all. But if you do come with the standard alloys, for me, I probably wouldn't even buy the car. So without a doubt, one of the most important decisions you'll make is choosing the seats for your 812. So there are basically two main options here. You get the electric seats or you get the racing seat. So we'll start off by looking at the electric seats, which we've got in our Mac Grigio 812 GTS. And basically, as standard, you do get 8-way electric seats, but most people upgrade these for the fully electric seats, which was about a £3,500 option. With the fully electric seats, not only do you get more adjustability, so you can get that sort of more perfect driving position, you also get the memory function, so you get 3 buttons down here which can preset your driving position, which is good for people that like lending their cars out, or their wife might drive the car regularly, just to make sure you always can get back to that perfect driving position. Also, with fully electric seats, you get a link to the electric steering column. You get an easy exit, easy entry functions where the steering column actually raises up as you get in and out of the car, which is pretty handy. And you also get heated seats, which you don't get with the racing seats, which, look, I think in the UK is definitely worth having. You know, with the GTS, when you're driving around with the top down, it can get a little bit chilly at times, so having those heated seats just makes you feel a little bit more warm and cozy. But the main benefit of choosing the electric seats is they are a bigger seat, they're more comfortable. You know, no matter what your size, you're going to be able to fit into these seats. The downsides really are, obviously, if you're using your car on track, they're not ideal. You're going to slide around a bit too much, not plant you in the seat. Also, they are, if you're a little bit taller, they do sit up a little bit high. So if you are pretty tall, you don't get all that much headroom. Obviously not such an issue with GTS when you've got the top down. And lastly, you could say they don't look quite as sexy as the racing seats. So I'm now just going to talk a little bit about the different seat designs with the fully electric seats. These are actually the standard seat designs, but I do particularly like the seats on this car, not only because it's got some lovely contrast stitching, it's also got these little perforated section, which just is a nice little detail. But I do think the contrast stitching is what's important when you go for a black leather interior, just to lift the whole interior a little bit. So you've got the stitching on the bolsters, you've got the stitching through the center of the seat, but the one I think is really important is getting it on the headrest, that embroidered prancing horse, which if you don't get that, it can just look a little bit bland, especially if you get no contrast stitching at all. Personally, I tend to avoid those cars, or at least devalue them. So some of the other seat design choices are the Daytona seats. That is a pretty traditional Ferrari choice, pretty safe choice, I'd say. But there is also the quilted option, and there are two different types of quilting. There is the diamond stitched quilting, which I think personally looks a little bit dated on the 812. That's mainly because Ferrari introduced this new style of quilting, this squared quilting on the 812. I wasn't 100% sure about it at first, but it has grown on me quite a bit, and obviously that's what this car has. Pretty unusual color scheme, this car, with the charcoal and the red, definitely a bit different. And you can select between leather and Alcantara. Quite a few people tend to get the Alcantara for the quilted section. And then just lastly, if you do get the squared quilting, you can also get it on the Alcantara roof lining as well. So the other main option when selecting your seats are these, the carbon fiber racing seats. These are about a £5,000 or £6,000 option if you went for the Daytona racing seats, obviously the more expensive of the two. They're not quite as adjustable as the full electric seats, but you do get a little bit of movement, but it is all manual. So you can move the seats manually backwards and forwards. You can also use this little knob here to move the backrest back and forward. And then the other nice thing, you can also select the racing seat lifter option. That's about a £1,500 option, and it gives you this little contraption down here, so you can move the seat and adjust the height of the seat. But the nice thing about the racing seats, especially if you're quite tall like myself, is you just get more room. So the seats actually sit quite a bit lower than the electric seats, so you've got more knee room, you've got a little bit more headroom, but most of all, you just feel more sort of connected to the car, obviously that driving position with the bolsters sort of hugging you in. You just feel like it's got a more race-focused feel to the whole car. The other thing worth noting is the size of the seats. There are a few different options here. You get small, medium, or large. I think you can maybe get an extra large, that might be the newer Ferrari models, but most people want to go with the large seats. They're the kind of safest option. Wouldn't say don't go with the medium option, especially if you're a slimmer frame, but I think large is probably the one to go for. So again, just touching on the different seat designs for the racing seats, obviously this car has got that Daytona racing seat, which was actually a new thing for the 812. The F12 didn't have this option, and that's one of the reasons why I like it, because it was a sort of newer thing. It looks more modern, more current, but there are obviously a few other options. The nice thing about this car, full Alcantara. Most of the racing seats will have a leather bolster and Alcantara through the middle. But obviously this is really down to personal preference, but I like the nice soft touch of the full Alcantara. So the other design you can get for the racing seats are these. These are called the style racing seats, and I think they are very stylish. So you basically get a sort of mix of leather and Alcantara, sort of leather on the bolsters, Alcantara through the middle with the central seat stripe in leather. But the thing I really like about it is that sort of perforation in the Alcantara. It just gives it a really nice detail, and then you can obviously get a mix of colours. Like on this car, you've got the blue and the black, which just gives it a really classy feel. So a couple of other points worth making. One, you can spec an 812 with harnesses, safety harnesses. One thing to note about that is if you get harnesses, you don't get seat belts. Personally, I don't think you should get that on an 812. Save that for the track specials, the competizioni, because it is very restrictive, and this is more of a usable car, I'd say. So I don't think you want to buy one with harnesses. The other thing I want to mention, because this has come up a few times over the years of selling these, is the interior details, which you can get in colours. So on this car, it's in red, so you get a little strip on the dashboard, you get these little colour strips around the digital dash. If you get those in a really light colour, like a yellow, it can cause a little bit of reflection on the windscreen. Some people have complained about that, so bear that in mind. That's something that might just bother you. So ultimately, which seats should you go for? I think really it's going to depend, one, on your type of driving you're going to do, and two, the sort of size of your frame to see how you fit in the seat. Certainly if you're going to use your 812 more as a proper GT car and do long journeys, you're going to appreciate that little bit extra comfort. So maybe the electric seats are the ones for you. And obviously if you're going to use your car more as a track car, the racing seats are going to be the one for you. But look, the racing seats aren't for everyone. Obviously, if you don't quite fit into them, some people do complain about long journeys in the racing seats. Can give you a bit of a sore back, but that's not for everyone. Does it affect value? Yes, it really does, especially on the coupe, on the Superfast. You'll notice pretty much all the cheapest cars on the market have all got electric comfort seats. So you are going to pay more for a car with race seats. It's probably a little bit less apparent on the GTS, but still the race seats do get a bit of a premium. So when you come to sell your car, don't expect to get quite as much for your car as you would if you had race seats. Okay, so now we're going to talk about carbon fiber, and this is really the main thing that's going to affect the value of the car you're looking at, or the car you're looking to sell. And this is both interior and exterior carbon. So I'm going to show you around this car, which has got most of the carbon fiber options. And that's a general good rule of thumb, is actually look for a car with either lots of carbon or get a car with sort of no carbon. I don't think there's anything wrong with getting a car with no carbon, because it's also going to save you quite a bit of money. But the main ones you can get, and the most expensive one is this, is the under-door cover. That was about a £6,000 option. On the back, and personally I think this is the best one to have if you're going to have one carbon exterior option, is this, the rear bumper sides. It's the area that surrounds the exhaust system, and it is quite a thick piece of carbon, and obviously that's just going to be plastic if you don't get that. And that's not even one of the most expensive options. You can get carbon fiber mirrors. Not everyone likes carbon mirrors on a Ferrari, But one that's quite nice to have is the carbon fiber front insert, the front bumper insert, which is this whole section which surrounds the grille. You also get little fins on the side. I think that was about a £3,000 option. You can also get the little center caps in carbon. That's only about a £400 option, not overly important. And then the other ones you can get, which this car doesn't have, is the whole rear diffuser. So the client, for the first owner of this car, got this painted in the body color. So it does give a sort of different look having that in carbon. And then the final one is just a little rear boot trim, smallest section, about a £1,500 option. You can get that in carbon fiber too. So I'll quickly just show you the GTS as well. Largely the same exterior carbon fiber options, but you don't get the little trim here on the rear boot. Obviously with the roof mechanism, you get a different design there completely. And this car, I'll show you, it's also got the carbon fiber rear diffuser. But if you look closely at the diffusers, this has actually got a different design to the coupe. It's got a little bit of extra aero going on too. So now we're going to talk about interior carbon fiber and which are the key interior carbon options to look out for. For me, the single most important option on the car is the carbon fiber steering wheel. Obviously you get the LED part of the steering wheel which lights up at the optimum time to change gear, but just having that carbon steering wheel I think is so important, to the point where if I find a car without it, I actually just don't want to buy it. I mean, maybe if it's a tailor-made where it's gone for a sort of very different theme, but in general, I tend to avoid cars without that option. And bear in mind, you can get the carbon fiber driver zone, which gives you the carbon fiber shift pedals, also the little ring around the tachometer, or you can just get the steering wheel. The next most important one for me, I think, is the central bridge, which is this little area here. Obviously, some cars are going to have that in aluminium. Maybe some people prefer that. I do quite like having that in carbon, and then you can get the carbon dashboard insert. So that's this section here, little section at the side and just under the sides of the steering wheel as well. That's a more expensive option. Not a deal breaker if a car doesn't have that, but it does sort of surround your entire view, so it is quite nice to have that. This car's also got the upper tunnel trim, which is this section surrounding the central bridge. Again, I don't think it's a key one, but it is nice. It does make the car feel quite a lot sportier. This car's also got the carbon fiber inner door handle, just this little section around the door handle. Not overly important, I wouldn't say, but nice to have. You can also get carbon fiber door panels. That's this entire section here. I personally think that can be a bit overkill unless you're obsessed with carbon. Personally, I think almost better off without that option. And the one I really like, which is just a small one, is on the exterior sill kick. So as you open the door, this little section underneath, which is the first thing you see every time you open the door. One additional carbon option you can get on the Superfast, which you can't get on the GTS, is the rear bench trim. So this car doesn't have it, but this area back here, you can get that in carbon. Obviously with the GTS, you don't get a rear bench, but quite a nice one to have. If you're really lucky, you might find a car with carbon fiber engine bay. So two different options here. One is the engine covers, which is this section here on the middle, and then you get the whole surrounds. The other option is the carbon fiber filter box covers, which are these two sections here. I think that's about a £3,500 option, and the engine covers are about £6,500, so 10 grand's worth. Not many people went for it, but as I said, you're lucky if you can find one. So as a buyer, do I look for a car with all the carbon? Absolutely. Do I value the car more highly because of all the carbon? Absolutely. But how much more? This is the difficult question. For me, my rule of thumb is probably 10 to 15 grand, maybe 20 grand more if it's got all the carbon options. Obviously nothing like the combined cost of it all, but it is just more desirable to have all that carbon. It's going to be an easier car to sell, but look, there is a limit to how much more you can ask. Do I mind buying cars with no carbon? Certainly no exterior carbon doesn't bother me at all. I just know I'm going to need to make that car cheaper than a car with lots of carbon. The interior options, slightly more important, I think, especially that driver zone. But look, try and find a car with as much carbon as possible. Right, so now I'm just going to point out some of the most important tech features and convenience features. I'll start off with suspension lifter because I think that's probably the most important one. I know a lot of people basically refuse to buy a car without it. Obviously, if you've got a steep drive or you've got speed bumps around you, you're gonna need suspension lifter. But look, it's not an absolute essential for everyone, but I do just think it adds a bit of resale value. And I always like to see it on the spec plaque. I mean, look, it just works by pressing this little button down here, lowers and raises suspension. So yeah, I think quite a good one to have. So the next option I want to discuss is the passenger display. Now it's easy to dismiss this as a bit of a gimmick, a bit of a novelty item when the car first came out, but actually it's surprisingly practical because on the 812 there is no central screen here. Basically, as a passenger, you can't just lean over to change the nav, to change the music. You've actually got to do it here on the passenger display. So you have your media section where you can obviously select your music, whether that's Bluetooth or USB. Then you have your navigation, so you can obviously select the destination, look at the points of interest around you, which is quite useful. You also have your performance, which is a good one for the kids because you can see the top speeds, you can see what gear you're in. And then finally you have your VDA, which is a bit more technical about the performance of the car. It is worth mentioning, if you don't select passenger display, your logo of your model actually sits nicely there. When you do select passenger display, obviously it just sits on top on the leather. A few more worth mentioning. Apple CarPlay, so usually quite a nice thing to have. I would say on the 812, because the screens are so small, probably has limited appeal. Hi-Fi, you can get the upgraded JBL sound system. It is a bit better. Let's remember you've got a V12 in the front. That's the best sound of all. You can get the active matrix headlight upgrade. That can be useful, especially if you drive at night. And you can obviously get some different camera options, reverse camera. They do an advanced front driving camera as well. And I think this car's got surround view with cameras in the mirrors, so you can get that top view. But again, remember the screens are pretty small, so I wouldn't say it's super important. One I will mention is the full ADAS pack, the Advanced Driving Assistance Systems, which this car has got, which is a great safety option. It's got front radar, back radar, so you're not going to get into any sort of accidents. Well, hopefully not, but it will detect them for you. But the one thing I will say is just aesthetically, you'll notice this little rectangular plastic box. That's where a lot of the driving assistance sits. And it does maybe just take away aesthetically. If you're sort of a little bit OCD, it could, once you see it, you can't unsee it. But certainly, if safety is important to you, it is a good one to have. So another really important one is your Scuderia shields on your fenders. And you have a choice here. You've got the more traditional option here with the Scuderia badges here on the fenders. But nowadays you also have the airbrush shields, which are hand painted, completely seamless on the paint, and they just look beautiful. Obviously a lot bigger, so they really do set your car apart. They're about an £8,500 option, so you don't see it very often, and certainly you don't see them very often on the Superfast. On the GTS it became slightly more seen, but yeah, if you can find a car with that, it's a real bonus. So now on to one of the key choices, and it is your color combination. Of course, this is a very subjective choice. Personal preference is going to play a big part. So I'll just give a little bit of feedback as a buyer who buys a lot of these cars, what I see maybe has a little bit of extra value. But look, we'll start off with the reds, because this is obviously one of the main colors as a Ferrari. This particular car is actually Rosso 2007 F1. And I think this is a really special, it's got much more metallic than the Rosso Corsa. Rosso Corsa for me on the 812, I don't think it's a great choice. We've actually struggled a little bit with Rosso Corsa on this car. It is more of a gentleman's car, so a little bit sort of subtler colors. Certainly the darker reds are good. Rosso Fuoco, Rosso Maranello, I think are great colors, obviously quite a costly paint option. So yeah, I think if you're gonna go red, try and find a triple layer red, a more special red, a historic red. If you're going to go blue, there are quite a few choices here as well. This is actually blue Nart, which is quite a rare choice. The only 812 I've ever seen in blue Nart. That's the colour of the Speciale stripe, just so you know. But yeah, quite a classy, nice blue. You can obviously get blue Tour de France. We've got the blue Pozzi, blue Scuderia we've had before. But blue does really suit the car well. Again, you can just combine this with some really different interiors. Tan, chocolate, crema, black. It kind of all goes with blue. But yeah, I think blue's nice. But for me, one of the most popular choices is grey, and I'll also say black as well, because we don't have a black car today. But grey and black, I think, has got the biggest market. They're probably the two most popular colours for the car. This particular colour is Grigio Silverstone Matte. It's a £22,000 option, obviously factory matte paint. I think it looks sensational on this car, and if you can, well, if you could have stretched to that, it is a great choice and obviously adds value to the car. But there's Grigio Silverstone, Grigio Ferro. We've sold loads of cars like that, 812s, and they always do well. So I think that's a really safe option. This car is blue Pozzi, which is one of the flat blues, dark blue, combined with that sort of chocolate interior. I think looks great on a GTS. What I would say is the GTSs, you'll get a sort of bigger variety of colours on the GTSs. People seem to go a bit braver, I think. different interiors. There's more sort of tans and things on the GTS, whereas the Superfast tends to be slightly safer. You're not going to find too many out there specs, but the GTS, you can get something just a little bit different. The ones I'd say to think twice about, certainly from my perspective when I'm looking at valuing these cars, the two colors I'd probably say I tend to steer away from a little bit or devalue them is probably white and yellow. It just doesn't quite suit the character of the car, I think, but look, don't want to offend anyone, it is personal preference. The color still looks good, especially the pearlescent or the triple layer whites and yellows, but yeah, I personally try and avoid those colors when I'm looking to buy them, or at least devalue them. If you want to find something really different, you could try and find a dark green or a purple. They're really hard to find, but if you can find them, they're really quite special. Really sets your car apart from the rest that are on the market. So I've talked mostly about choosing the right spec for your 812, but the next thing you're going to want to consider, and certainly what I consider, is the warranty and the servicing situation. So look, obviously, a lot of this depends on the age of the car. As standard, each 812 worldwide comes with a 3-year warranty. In the UK, we get a 4-year warranty. So obviously, depending on the age of the car, you'll know how much of the manufacturer's warranty you've got left. The good thing is you can extend this. So if the warranty hasn't lapsed, you can get an extended manufacturer's warranty, so the exact same level of cover as the original warranty. That is only up to 7 years old though. So up to 7 years old, you can do this. If the warranty has lapsed, you get a different type of warranty from Ferrari. It's something called a Power 15 warranty. It's not quite the same level of cover. It's all the major components, but not quite. And I think the difference in value, or difference in cost, I should say, it's about £3,000 to £4,000 for the Power 15 warranty. It's about £5,000 or £6,000 for the proper extended Ferrari warranty. And it's called that Power 15 because it actually can last up to 15 years. So you can get that warranty up to 15 years old. So in 2034 for a 2019 car, you can no longer get that warranty. It is worth mentioning the dealer warranties can be pretty good as well. I know our Romans International Platinum warranty is every bit as good as that Power 15. So depending on the dealer you're buying from, check out their warranty because it's often actually, we've noticed, they pay out more than the Ferrari warranty. So do not dismiss cars that don't have a Ferrari warranty. But the good thing is you can just take a car, you can take your car to a Ferrari dealer and buy a warranty. You can all the warranties are also transferable, which is not like Porsche, McLaren, which they make you jump through hoops to transfer warranties. But with Ferrari, the warranty is with the car, so it transfers to whoever owns it, which I think is a great way to be for Ferrari. The other thing is with the servicing, 7 years free servicing. So, you know, a 2018 car, the early cars are still under that servicing maintenance program. So no one has to spend a penny on servicing until they're past that 7-year date, which is a massive selling point on these. Okay, so I'm just going to round up by talking a little bit about the market, some of the price differences between the Superfast and the GTS, and which one might be the better buy. Look, the Superfast came out first in 2018, and quite quickly, within a couple of years, the values dropped pretty hard. So it did make people think twice when they were ordering their GTS. Our GTS is going to lose a lot as well. So maybe there were less around of the GTSs. So the Superfast finished production in 2021. And that's, you know, just during sort of COVID times when actually values started to bounce back. You know, they had sort of reached about 200 and suddenly they sort of surged in demand again and they sort of went back up to 220, 230. This is pounds sterling I'm talking in. And the 812 GTSs were actually selling for over list at that time. You know, we were selling them for well over 400 grand and they were really a hot car. I mean, bear in mind, you know, this was the first front-engine V12 drop top in absolute decades. So it was a really important car, the GTS. But now they've both finished production. So the GTS actually finished production earlier this year, 2024. So you can no longer order one. You've got to think the 12 Cylindri, which has come out to replace it, it's had a pretty mixed reaction. Quite a lot of people don't like the styling. So I think that's going to help, even though it is still a naturally aspirated V12. But right now, where they're sitting, a sort of entry-level Superfast, you can pick up now for about 190 grand, maybe a higher mileage one for even less. But I think they're going to sort of hold pretty firm from there. You know, maybe some of the later ones, which might be sort of 230, 240, maybe they'll come down a little bit more. Whereas the GTSs, they've sort of come down just under 300 grand now from where they were, you know, a few years ago, over 400. That's some quite heavy depreciation, but again, I think now is not the worst time. Maybe they've got a little bit further to come down, but look, you know, you shouldn't only buy this with sort of future values in mind. I think, you know, going far into the future, they are going to be important cars. This is a V12 Ferrari, you know, it's been reviewed amazingly. It's one of the great modern supercars. But look, whether you choose an 812 GTS or an 812 Superfast, really it's going to come down to price. Obviously, a hard top GTS, it's very much like a coupe with the drop top up. So really it's going to come down to budget and whether you think you can stretch to the GTS, but I think really for under 200 grand, the Superfast is just an amazing buy. But if you want something a bit more unique, you might find yourself an Atelier specification, or even rarer, you'll find a tailor-made example. This car is an Atelier specification. You'll notice on the door sill here, it says Atelier personalized with Ferrari. And all this really means is you've gone to the Ferrari factory to spec your car, which is a great experience, don't get me wrong. And you can get little options like this, the painted 812 GTS, but it doesn't add loads of value to the car, if I'm honest. A tailor-made example, on the other hand, can add some serious value. Tailor-made is literally completely customized, you get all sorts of different materials, wild liveries, but the thing with it is it's quite personal. The person who spec'd it originally really made it for them. So trying to find another buyer who really appreciates everything, you know, you're not going to get all the value from what it cost new, but it definitely adds value. So if you can find a tailor-made that you really love, that is a good one to go for. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you found that useful. Sorry if we haven't covered absolutely everything, but we've done our best. Let us know if there's another model you'd like us to do a buyer's guide on. But look, otherwise, thanks for watching. Please give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and make sure you're subscribed, and we'll see you again very soon.